Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Fun with Flags with 50 and Soda. I'm your friendly neighborhood Soda, but today I am Lord Soda of Terrace. And joined with me, as always, 50 Shades of Hockey today. How's it going, my dude?
50 years of hockey.
That's right, 50 years of hockey. Even though we're talking about something that is quite significantly older than that.
I was going to ask, has hockey been around for 50 years?
Well, hockey, the true origins of hockey are disputed as to who invented it, but it's been around. The earliest known written record of it, I want to say, is the late 1700s, if not the early 1800s. So it's been around a long time. And of course, it's like most things, it's evolved from other sports, from other cultures and stuff like that. But the actual pinpoint origin of hockey is really hard to pin down. But we're here to talk about a slightly different origin in the hockey world. Originally, I was going to do the origin in the NHL, but after watching a bunch of stuff this week, I'm like, that's going to be a really long show. So instead, I tweaked it a little bit, and we're going to do the early years of what is arguably the most recognizable sports trophy in all of sports, none other than the Stanley Cup. Now, this is actually the different variations of the Stanley Cup throughout the year. So the one on the left, the little one, is the original one from 1893, which they do bring out on display every once in a while. And then throughout the years, they all of a sudden they just started to include the names of the players. So that's why the Stanley Cup has gotten bigger in size and different shapes, is because whenever a ring is finished, they add a new one and they remove the oldest one. So that way you can see all the names on the Stanley Cup of those who have won. It's I think the only trophy that does that.
But I love that they're still keeping it the grail shape at the end.
Exactly. And like I said, every once in a while, they do bring the original out on display. Thank you to the Toronto Sun for this.
And I love that they call it the Holy Grail.
Well, it literally is the Holy Grail of hockey. Like, it's priceless at this point. Like, it's
the invaluable. Holy
Grail! I set you up for that!
You did. No, it because it's the hardest trophy to win in all the sports, because you have to win a total of 16 nowadays. Anyways, you have to win a total of 16 games to win the cup. Or like in football, you only have to win 4 games. You don't have a best of 7 series. Baseball, it's the first couple of series of best of 3, then it goes to the best of 7. Basketball, well, hey, they pull a muscle, they're out for the whole game. Meanwhile, there's a hockey player a couple weeks ago that actually literally ruptured a testicle in the hockey game and finished it. Yeah, he took a slap shot to the nuts, and the cup didn't do shit.
Yeah, there's this Israeli stand-up comedian that made fun of the whole fact that every move in basketball is like a foul or an injury, or whatever. It's like whenever in football, real football, not the American thing. Football, whenever like the referee blows a whistle or whatever, all the players are like, I never touched him, I didn't allow, he blocked me, he threw me in it. And then basketball, the referee blows a whistle, I did it, it was me, it was my foul, it was me, I did it.
Meanwhile, there have been instances in hockey, and I've only noticed it the last couple of years, where if a referee pulls a penalty on someone, I have actually seen it where the person that the player supposedly took the penalty on went up to the refs like, no, he didn't actually do that, and they pulled the penalty back.
How often does that happen?
I've seen it probably 2-3 times in the last 5 years. I don't remember it happening before, but I'm sure it has.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing that there is some justice in sports.
Yeah. So outside of what I've said about the Stanley Cup, is there anything else you know about it?
I know that it's played on ice with sticks and a little black puck thing.
Okay.
And they got this really cool looking mask.
Yes, the goalie mask, which wasn't always around, and goalies used to have to stand there with no helmet to take the brunt of a slap shot.
Yeah, and how many of these goalies broke their skulls before they realized they needed a mask?
A lot. I should show you a picture of Terry Sawchuk by the end of his career. It's like all of these scars on his face. But anyway, so what we know about the Stanley Cup is, like I said, the best of 7 series, the intensity, but for me, it's always the celebrations. Like this one right here from the 2001 is one I will always hold close to my heart because this is Wade Bork's last game. He got his whole career without winning the Stanley Cup. He's arguably one of the best defensemen ever play. Finally, they won him the cup in 2001, and they actually broke tradition here because usually it's the captain that gets the cup from the commissioner, and he celebrates it. Not this time. Joe Sakic, the captain of the Avalanche, immediately took the cup from the commissioner, and he turned and he handed it to Ray Bourque. So Ray Bourque was the first one that year to raise the cup. Great scene. I actually remember where I was when I watched this. And, of course, a couple years earlier, we had the 1998 Detroit Red Wings, which was actually kind of a bittersweet moment because this was the second of back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. However, one of the players from the previous year couldn't play anymore because he was involved in a serious limo accident while they were celebrating with the Stanley Cup. You can see him on the right-hand side of the picture there, Vladimir Konstantinov. Basically, they did the whole season for him, and I cannot remember the guy's name. He was also involved in the car crash that also got severely injured. But yeah, one of the first things they did is when they won the cup that year, they brought him out on the ice in his jersey. They put the cup on him, and big celebration. Like this team photo has been a tradition since 1987. You win the cup, you get a picture with all your teammates and all the coaches and all the owners and everybody that was involved. And it's really great moments. And of course, this is probably arguably the most famous Stanley Cup winning goal of all time. Bobby Orr. This goal has been immortalized in statue form, paintings. It's on stamps. Basically, Bobby Orr comes out of the corner. His teammates behind the net passes him the puck. Just as Bobby shoots it in the net, he is tripped by the opposing player's defender, and he literally flies through the air as he scores the goal like Superman. And it is one of those moments that is entrenched in hockey history. You can't go anywhere that celebrates the NHL and not see that image.
Could you bring up? Yeah. So that's him right in the center, right? The one with.
And it's in the center. What I'm going to do for you is I'm actually going to try to find the footage. Bobby Orr flying goal. Like I told you, it's freaking easy to find.
So the one it looks like he's jumping and flying.
Yeah,
that's
I'll show you the goal here. Just give me one moment to bring it up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you keep throwing these names at me that I don't know.
Fair.
I don't have a face to connect them to.
Okay. So thankfully this is color footage that I found. But
that I would care.
Sure, but at least it helps. So you can see what the team's jerseys look like. But I forwarded to the moment of the goal. So this is it right here. Ah, damn it.
Technology, people.
Yes, gotta love it when all the buttons are so close together. So I'm gonna play with the audio.
Okay.
So like I said,
monetized.
This is old footage, whatever. As long as we're talking over it. Just gonna show. Okay, so here's the setup to the goal.
St. Louis on. Racing in is Carlton for the Bruins.
Wayne Carlton.
Centered it up close in front, and Calvin cleared it. Here's
you can
Don
see Bobby
Orr
coming out of the right-hand
That's
corner
blocked by Calvin. Now Sanderson a drive, and that one whistles
The Bruins, right?
for the Bruins. Tied up by Ecclestone and Berenson. Westfall rolled it in front. Sanderson trying to shot that was
Yeah, that's Bobby Orr.
Cleared it, but not off.
Here we
Bobby
go.
Orr. Behind Sanderson. Orr! Bobby Orr!
And you get the context?
Orr!
I didn't see it. That was so quick.
Exactly.
Follow such a tiny puck.
Okay, now I'm going to show it to you from the angle that everybody knows.
Oh, okay.
So this right here, this is the replay. This right here is Bobby Orr.
Okay.
Out in front to Orr, and Bobby Orr made no mistake in beating Glenn Hall. And the Bruins win the Stanley Cup, and now we have the St. Louis Blues and the Boston Bruins congratulating each other. There's Bobby Orr, the man that scored the winning goal. In behind Glenn Hall on Sanderson's pass.
Yeah, that's Bobby Orr right here.
Behind the net to Sanderson, out in front to Orr, and Bobby Orr made no mistake in beating Glenn Hall. And the Bruins win the Stanley Cup, and now,
like I said, it's one of the, if not the most famous goal in Stanley Cup history.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Now, unfortunately, and as you could probably tell from that picture, Bobby Orr had to retire early because of bad knees. But
I wonder why.
He's still one of the greatest defensemen to ever play. He only played 10 years, but he was like It was like a new type of player coming into the NHL. But that's not why we're here. We're going back a lot further than that, to the time of 1893. This is the Stanley Cup
look
photo.
at these mustachioed British people.
They're Canadians. This is
British-looking people.
This is the first Stanley Cup winners, the Montreal Hockey Club, also known as Montreal AHAC. So naturally, it was a Montreal team that won it. So this cup win was, like I said, 1893. Who did they challenge back then? They beat a team called the Montreal Victorias, and they also beat the Ottawa Senators. Now, what's interesting about the Stanley Cup is everybody knows it's the NHL. That wasn't always the case. Up until 1927, it was what known was as a Challenge Cup. So basically, the champions of any hockey league in North America could challenge the Stanley Cup champions.
Okay.
So you got some incredibly wild stories. You've also got some teams that you would have never even heard of that has gone to play for the Stanley Cup finals, Stanley Cup, like the Kenora Thistles out of Kenora, Ontario. Never heard of them, have you?
I never heard of any hockey team.
Kenora is a town in Ontario, and back in the early 20th century, in the late 1800s, they were a powerhouse in hockey, but they're a city that cannot sustain a team nowadays.
Oh,
now
that's unfortunate.
Now, this one is wild. This is the Dawson City Nuggets, all the way out from Dawson City, Yukon. They have the distinction of traveling the furthest to play in a Stanley Cup game. Give me a second to bring up the stats on this because it is crazy.
So to translate into words that I understand, it's like the first couple of seasons of the Schmodown. Where everyone can challenge
basically
someone else as long as they have the record to prove it.
Yeah, so this is off of Wikipedia for the Dawson City Nuggets. The Nuggets issued a Stanley Cup challenge against the reigning champions, the Ottawa Senators, who at that time were known as the Ottawa Silver Seven because they had won 7 Stanley Cups by this time in the summer of 1904. Ottawa accepted the challenge in October. So the Dawson City team was sponsored and managed by Klondike operator Joseph W. Boyle, and it composed of men from the mining camps during the tail end of the Yukon Gold Rush. Dawson City's challenge was accepted in the summer of 1904 by the Stanley Cup trustees, scheduled to start on Friday, the 13th, 1905. It was to be a best of 3 series because back then they didn't do best of 7, they didn't do best of 5, it was best of 3. Where did I lose my spot? So the date of the challenge meant that Young had to travel later as he had to work in a federal election that December and meet the club in Ottawa. So some historians have also questioned why Dawson City was even granted a chance in the Stanley Cup, as Dawson City had won no championships and did not belong to any recognized senior league. But on the other hand, Ottawa had considerable championship experience, having defeated all challengers since winning the cup in 1903. Now, this is where the story of the Dawson City Nuggets gets wild. To get to Ottawa, 4,000 miles away or 6,400 kilometers away, the Dawson City Club would have to get to Whitehorse, which is probably 600 kilometers away from Dawson City by road, catch a train from there to Skagway, Alaska, then catch a steamer to Vancouver, and a train from there to Ottawa. On December 18th, 1904, several players set out by dog sled, and the rest left the next day by bicycle to get to Whitehorse. Talk about determination.
Yes. Good thing that nowadays sports teams actually have some sending them to these places as opposed to having to go through all this.
Yeah, and then that is it's not the series because they got their asses handed to them. It's the determination and the story and the travel of how to get there that ingrains them in hockey history, because that's unheard of.
I mean, like you said, they lost, but at least they got that part of history. They etched that part of history with their names on it.
Yeah, exactly. So they left on December 18th. They arrived in Ottawa on January 11th, 2 days before the first game, which they refused to change the date of.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, no wonder they lost.
Right. So this is the overlay the series. So 8 men each played for. Okay, so now you've got like over 20 players in each team. You got rotating lines. You got backup goalies. Back then, 8 players per team. No rest. 8 men.
Substitutes then.
Sorry?
No substitutes then.
Exactly, no substitutes. I actually got an interesting story for later on in the Stanley Cup's history involving that. 8 men played for each team during the best-of-3 series. The Dawson City roster consisted of goaltender Albert Forrest, point Jim Johnston, cover point Lauren Haney, which is a position that's actually not around anymore. Neither of these positions, the Rovers, Randy McLennan and Dave Fairborn, and center Hector Smith, left winger Norm Watt, and right winger George Kennedy. The Ottawa roster consisted of goaltender Dave Finney, points Bones Allen and Harvey Pulford, cover point Art Moore, rover Rat Wetswick, center legendary pioneer of hockey, one-eyed Frank McGee. Yes, he literally played with one eye and scored 14 goals in a game, something that will never be eclipsed nowadays. Left winger Fred White and right winger Alf Smith. So 4 of those players would be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
For good reason.
For good reason. Like one-eyed Frank McGee, like I said, he was a legendary of the sport back then. He was a legend. So the first game started decently for Dawson, being down only 3-1 at the halftime, because back then they didn't have 3 periods. It was really the first half and the second half. But that's when things started to get bad. So Norman Watt of Dawson City, he tripped Ottawa's Art Moore, who retaliated with a stick to the mouth of Watt. So back then they didn't care about using their stick as weapons. Nowadays, you get suspended and
nowadays there are rules in place.
Exactly. So how did Norman Watt retaliate? He promptly knocked Art Moore out, hitting on the head with a stick. The game ended 9-2 for Ottawa. The Frank McGee entry says 9-3, which is their Wikipedia entry, with Alf Smith scoring the game high 4 goals. The game left a poor taste in the Yukoners, who claimed that several goals were offside. After the second game, the Globe reported, the visiting team was outclassed tonight quite as decisively as the score indicates. In fact, had it not been for the fact of Forrest's presence in the Dawson goal, the score against them might have been a great deal larger. Ottawa simply skated away from them at the whistle and continued to pile up the goals with a merciless, monotonous regularity, which was farcical in the extreme. Now, 50. Do you care to take a gander at what the score of the game was?
Different from what you said earlier, the 9-2?
Yep.
I'm going to say 12-3?
Higher.
Oh, boy. So they really got their asses kicked.
23-2.
How do you even have time to score that many goals in a game?
This is the game that Frank McGee scored 14 goals.
The guy with the one eye?
The guy with the one eye. 8 of them.
14 goals in the same game?
Yep. 8 of them in less than 9 minutes. And it is still the record for the most goals scored by a single player in a Stanley Cup game or any other major senior hockey league 100 and almost 120 years later.
Ouch.
Yeah.
You know, and I was going to bring up the not that I follow any kind of sports at all, especially now that the Schmodown is gone, but I do tend to be around people who talk endlessly about it. And about a week or so ago in real football, not the fake football that Americans think is called football, but isn't, the team from my home city, they managed to score a goal within the first 30 seconds of the game.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that happen.
Didn't really matter at all in the long run, but, I mean, hey, first 30... The running joke was that the coach didn't even have time to sit down, and there was already a goal.
Yeah, I've seen that happen quite a bit.
Do you follow real football, by the way?
Not really. It's one of those sports I would rather play. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find.
I don't do neither.
Game in Stanley Cup. I'm just trying to find what the modern equivalent of the highest scoring game in Stanley Cup playoffs history is. Okay, so the next. Oh Jesus! They don't really give you much information, so.
Where are you looking it on an official
NHL website. So yeah, it looks like the next highest one that I can find is 1973, 8-7. To put you that in perspective.
So 23 to what?
23-2.
Phew. Yeah, and that's the closest thing.
Yeah. So you've seen hockey, right? So you know what the game looks like.
In theory.
Okay, so this is what hockey looks like nowadays. I'm only going to play a couple seconds, but this is what hockey looks like nowadays.
Over there and over there, okay.
So I can see the field is bigger than the one you showed me earlier.
But you see all the skill and all this stuff. Right, you see all the puck play, all the skill.
Good on them for following such a tiny puck as the main focus of the game.
It's actually once you know to look for, it's actually pretty easy to follow.
Because it's a black dot on a white background.
Yep, this is the size of a hockey puck right here.
Oh, it's actually larger than I thought it would be.
It's also frozen, so it goes along the ice easier. So that is what hockey looks like nowadays. I have found the oldest recorded footage of a hockey game. This is from 1898 outdoors. So you'll see the difference. This is recorded by Thomas Edison. It's only 28 seconds. But this is what hockey looked like in the early days.
And that's an actual ice.
That is an actual body of water frozen over. That is how we do it in Canada.
Oh,
how we used to do it. Now, of course, every town's got hockey rinks and stuff like that. But this is what hockey looked like in 1998. Now, I got another video that fast forwards 32 years, 2 years after the NHL took over ownership of the Stanley Cup. So this is 1929. This is a team called the Chicago Shamrocks. This is what it looked like 30 years later. You still had your fans. Like, there's still a lot of similarities and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm guessing they're not really playing. They're just...
This is the pregame warm-up.
Yeah. That's why everything's so slow.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, of course, the camera speed and stuff. But yeah, this is what... Yeah, so here we go.
This is the game.
This is hockey. Well,
Where's the... Oh, there it is. Wait.
Quite the contrast, eh?
Yeah. The other one was much more relaxed, much more chill. Mm-hmm. This one is a sport. No matter which way you look at it. And this is a non-sports guy talking.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, if you actually stay to the end of the video, we'll see how they did the Zamboni back then.
And a Zamboni is what exactly?
So a Zamboni is a machine that floods the ice. It may pretty much it's basically the best way to put it. It's a machine that takes a dry erase marker across the ice sheet and renews it. So what it does is it pours water on the ice that fills in the gaps created by the skate blades and stuff like that. And then it's got a mop that goes over it and it freezes and it basically makes a new sheet of ice.
Now, I would imagine you have to do that every once in a while.
You have to do, they do it every period, between every period.
Because it's such a dynamic game.
Right. And I mean, like you can still play on chopped up ice or whatever, but you give the players the best possible advantage is to do it on a smooth ice surface. Because if the best way, you probably won't understand the euphemism, but the best way I could describe hearing hockey skates on a fresh, clean sheet of ice is like listening to bacon sizzle in the grill.
Oh,
yeah. It's bacon. Such a great sound. So yeah, so this, like I said, the Stanley Cup basically was a Challenge Cup up until 1927. Now, the first recognizable team that we know of that won was the Montreal Canadiens. Now, what year did they win that for the first time? Sorry,
Montreal Canadiens. How creative! Yes. They're Canadians from Montreal.
But it's spelt the French pronunciation way. It's spelt Canadien. So there's an A instead of an A at the end.
So just explain to me, how did the pronunciation of it with a K came up with, or is that just like a slang or a joke?
Oh, you mean like why it's pronounced Canadian even though with a C?
No, I know it's the proper pronunciation or rather spelling is with a C, but I've seen some people, for example, Ryko calls himself the Canadian with a K. And I just assumed it's a joke or something.
It is a joke. I think it's mostly got to do with the K in his name. But yeah, it's mostly just a joke name.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to find what year they won their first Stanley Cup. 1915. This is a team that is still currently playing in the NHL. It holds
World War One.
Yeah, it holds the Montreal Canadiens hold the records for the most trophies, season-ending trophies won by any team in North America with 24, more than the Yankees. I think
The Yankees in hockey or the Yankees in fake football? Oh,
the New York Yankees. Yeah, the Montreal Canadiens, like I said, are the true great dynasty. They did win a couple cups, but it wasn't until the 1950s where they went on a tear with the greats like Maurice the Rocket Richard and Jean Beliveau and Jacques Plante, who was the first goalie to wear a mask, and Bernie Boom and Jeffrey Long. This is the guys my dad told me about growing up. All right, so now on to some funny stories involving the Stanley Cup. Because like I said, it's been around since 1893. So these are all lists. This is one time I will say Wikipedia thank you, because it actually took a list of all of the stories I was trying to find. So the first one legend is that in 1905, a member of the Ottawa Senators, also known as the Ottawa Silver Seven at the time, tried to drop kick the cup across the Rideau Canal after the championship banquet. So for those who don't know, the Rideau Canal is like this body of water that just goes right through Ottawa. And when it freezes over, kids of all ages and still goes on to they go and play ice hockey on the Rideau Canal. Well, this dumb shit tried to drop kick it across the thing.
I do know what a drop kick is. He's an idiot.
The attempt failed and the cup was not retrieved until the next day, but luckily the canal was still frozen over. This is actually funny enough. This is the celebration over the win over the Dawson City Nuggets. Yeah. And then in 1906, a week after members of the Montreal Wanderers left it at a photographer's studio, officials learned that the photographer's mother was using the cup to plant geraniums.
My mom's going to get a kick out of that one.
Yep. And then the next year, a Kenora Thistles team manager threatened to throw the cup into the Lake of the Woods in a dispute over the eligibility over two players.
Wow.
In 1924, members of the Montreal Canadiens, en route to celebrate their win at owner Leo Danduran's home, left it by the road after repairing a flat tire. The cup was recovered exactly where it left it. In 1925, Lyndon Muzz Patrick, the son of Vancouver Cougars coach Lester Patrick, who I have a fun story about afterwards, discovered the cup in the basement of their home and scratched their names on it with a nail. In 1940s, their names were properly engraved on it as members of the champion New York Rangers. So basically, it wasn't until 1940 when they started engraving nails with these dumb shits, so they do it on their own years earlier. Oh, and apparently they also urinated in the cup with teammates. People are weird.
Well, at least they revolutionized something.
Okay. Now, Lester Patrick, remember how earlier I had said that it was only a few players of the teams, there were no changes or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a famous incident from April 7th, 1928 in Game 2 of this 1928 Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Maroons. So after New York Rangers starting goaltender Lauren Shabbat suffered an eye injury after being hit by the puck in the middle of the second period because no masks.
Of course.
Lester Patrick, who was the coach of the team, this is the name I just mentioned earlier, he inserted himself into the game as the Rangers' new netminder, offering his now teammates the words, "Boys, don't let an old man down." At the age of 44 years and 99 days, Patrick remains the oldest man to have played in the Stanley Cup Finals. At the time, it was not common for teams to have a backup goaltender, and the opposing team's coach had to allow a substitute. However, Maroons coach refused to give permission for the Rangers to use Alec Connell, a goaltender for the rival Ottawa Senators, who was in the stands. Odie Cleghorn stood in for Patrick as coach for the remainder of the game, and Patrick saved 18 of 19 shots while allowing one goal and helping the Rangers to an overtime victory, where they went on to win the Stanley Cup 3 games later.
Cool.
Yeah, you don't hear things like that anymore because now it's more like the team structure we know. Because like I said, we got
because back in the day it was more like guerrilla style sports.
100%.
No rule.
There were riots. There was bloodshed.
This is why rules are important in sports.
100%. The All-Star game itself came about because of a severe injury that happened on the ice. It was done to raise money for the victim's family.
Wow.
That was the first All-Star game. Yeah, Hockey's got a great history, but there's a lot of incidences where you're like, oof. And luckily, only one person has died in an NHL game. 1967.
That's surprising.
And that happened because he got tripped during a game and he wasn't wearing a helmet because it wasn't a rule back then, and he hit his ice on the ice and passed away.
Well, in the military, we have a saying of you have this long list of rules how not to behave, safety rules, safety guidelines, and at the end of each of those lists, there's always that one saying, these guidelines were written in blood. And there you have it.
Interesting. Back in these days, there was a lot of blood. A lot of blood.
Nowadays in sports, there's also a lot of blood, but for different reasons.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so there's some more fun stories. During 1940-41, the mortgage on Madison Square Garden was paid. The management publicly celebrated by burning the mortgage in the Stanley Cup. So they took the piece of paper, they put it in the cup, and they lit it on fire.
Was the cup okay?
Yes, the cup was okay. Yeah. Some fans claim this act, quote unquote, desecrated the cup, leading to the curse of 1940, which allegedly caused the Rangers to wait 54 years for another win, which they did in 1994 against my favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. The fuckers.
Well, I mean, they had a 55-year curse. Could you at least let them have that?
Right? In 1957, the great French-Canadian icon, Modus the Rocket Richard, chipped both of his front teeth while drinking from the cup. In Chicago Stadium in the spring of 1961, the Montreal Canadiens were losing the final game of a playoff series to the Chicago Blackhawks. A Montreal fan named Ken Killander in the stands was upset. So he left his seat, ran down to the front lobby, and broke into the glass showcase where the Stanley Cup was on display. He grabbed the cup, hoisted it over his shoulders, and made for the exit before he was arrested. In court, he explained his behavior to the judge. Your Honor, I was simply bringing the cup back to Montreal where it belongs.
People go crazy over sports.
I was just watching a Watch Mojo video, which actually I didn't know Watch Mojo was Canadian. I found that very interesting. But they laid that on the table over a decade ago. I didn't know that until I watched another video recently, and they mentioned it. I was like, really? That explains why that one lady pronounces French words so perfectly. But no, there was a video on Watch Mojo where it was the top 10, the 10 most bloodiest fights in NHL history. Now, not all of them actually had blood, but number one, it's an infamous.
Bloody is an expression.
That's what it ended up being, was bloody with an expression. But number one, it's a legendary story. The Boston Bruins basically are one of the most hated teams in the history of the NHL because they're one of the more aggressive teams historically. In the 1970s, they were playing against the rivals, the New York Rangers, and something happened, and there was a brawl on the ice. But during all this fracas where the coach is getting into it, a fan went up behind the Bruins bench with his shoe. He clubbed somebody with a shoe and took their stick, which is a big no-no. You don't ever take a player's stick out of their hands. And while he was trying to run away, some Bruins players jumped into the stands and went after him, as well as fans. Like, they were just beating the shit out of him in the stands. Like, it is one of the most infamous brawls in history. You never get to see it nowadays, but they beat the crap out of a fan.
You're giving me a lot of materials here for my topic next week. So just, put a pin in a lot of the topics that you're throwing out there.
You got it. Okay, so some more Stanley Cup stories. In Chicago Stadium in the spring of 1961, the Montreal Canadiens... Oh, I already just read that one, sorry. In 1962, the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup. One of the last times they did. During a party after the win, the trophy was dropped in a bonfire and badly damaged. It was repaired at the expense of the team.
Ouch.
Yep.
That's gotta hurt.
In 1964... Red Kelly of the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's that name again, posed for a photo with his infant son sitting in the cup, only to find the child had urinated in it. Kelly was quoted years later as saying it has always since made him laugh to see players drinking out of the cup.
Oh, they're not using the same cup, are they?
Yeah, it's the same cup.
Oy.
So there's actually 3 Stanley Cups in existence officially. So you've got the original Challenge Cup, which I said they bring out, and it's only displayed at the Hockey Hall of Fame because it's literally priceless. You have the cup that is the display cup, which is the one when you go to the Hockey Hall of Fame, the one that everybody looks at, or when they parade it around for different events. There's that one. And then there's the actual presentation cup, which is the one that I'm talking about, which is the one that is given to the players on the ice when they win. That's the one with all the dents and all the scratches. And there's so many dents.
So it's a legacy cup, essentially.
Exactly. And like I said, and could you imagine if they kept all the rings on there instead of taking them off whenever a ring's finished? It would probably be taller than me. And it's already heavy to lift. Like, really heavy. I've seen players.
You put up that picture of the guy lifting it over his head. I'm like, how much does that thing weigh?
At that point,
on ice, man.
But yeah, it's how much does it weigh? How much is this? Yeah, that's a good question. How much is the Stanley Cup? How much does?
I can't believe I didn't ask that when you showed the.
It's not a question I've ever actually thought about. 34.5 pounds at this point.
How many?
34.5 pounds.
So in kilograms, how much is that?
Hold on. Pounds to kg. 35.5. 16 kilograms.
Okay. That's reasonable, but still, you're lifting that over your head and you're standing on ice.
But think about that. You just played the game of your life. Your adrenaline is coursing. At this point, you could probably lift a truck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. In 1970, after much wear and tear, the cup was finally replaced with a duplicate known as the Presentation Cup, which is the one that's given out to players, made in 1963, and a second duplicate called the Permanent Cup, which remains in the Hockey Hall of Fame. From this point on, in official functions and players' days with the cup, it is the Presentation Cup that is in circulation. So only the players get to be around the real cup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Winning players.
Yeah, exactly. The winning players. It's actually a superstition among hockey players to not touch the cup until you win. No.
I can believe that.
Clark Gillies of the New York Islanders filled the cup with dog food and let his dog eat out of it. He defended doing so by saying, he's a good dog.
Well, yes, of course.
The New York Islanders' Brian Trottier admitted to sleeping with the cup, as have apparently dozens of players. So basically, yeah, they took it to the cup.
So that cup is a slot then.
Basically, it gets around. It's seen more action than the Seattle Sloop.
Yeah, it's weird that it's done with so many players, and you don't see these little mini cups running around all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, no kidding, eh? Well, that's what the replicas are, which I have one kicking around somewhere. In 1987, the Edmonton Oilers' Mark Messier took it to his favorite club in his hometown of St. Albert, Alberta, and let fans drink out of it. It wound up slightly bent in various places for unknown reasons. It was repaired at a local automotive shop and shipped back to the Hockey Hall of Fame. The 1991 Pittsburgh Penguins and 1993 Montreal Canadiens decided to test its buoyancy by testing it into Mario Lemieux's and Patrick Waugh's respective pools. The Stanley Cup, noted then Canadiens captain Guy Carbonneau, does not float.
Ooh.
After the Montreal Canadiens Cup win in 93, the last time a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup, and this year is 30 years.
Oh,
it is the Canadian Cup at Origin, and they haven't won it in 30 years. Most of the teams apparently signed their names on the inside of the cup with a sharp object. So after the parade in their honor in 1994, members of the New York Rangers, including Mike Richter, took the cup to McSorley's old ale house, locked the doors, and for 45 minutes allowed the patrons to hoist it above their heads and drink McSorley's dark and light out of it. The New York Post reported the next day that the cup was taken back by the league for repairs to its base. Later, several New York Rangers took the cup to Belmont Park, filled it with oats, and let Kentucky Derby winner Gopher Gin eat out of it. The 1999 Dallas Stars Stanley Cup party was hosted at the house of Stars defenseman Clegg Ludwig and Pantera drummer Vinnie Paul. At the party, Stars forward Guy Carbonneau, apparently having forgotten the cup's lack of buoyancy from his 1993 adventures, allegedly attempted to throw the cup from the upstairs deck into the house's Crown Royal-shaped pool below. The cup caught the lip of the pool, producing a large dent. Mike Bolt, one of the keepers of the cup for the NHL, stated this never happened. What happened was that one of the players was posing with it next to the pool when someone pushed him into the water, and it went in with him. It was in the water maybe 2 seconds, Bolt said. It was a really good party from what I understand. The trophy was dented the previous day when a player dropped it during a locker room celebration, Bolt said. Which I call bullshit. I like the other story better.
Sounds crazy.
Exactly. It sounds right up there with history. In the 1999, wrong one. In 1999 and 2003, the Cup made a trip to Joe Newendike's alma mater, Cornell University, both times visiting a local college bar. In 2003, Martin Brodeur ate popcorn out of the Cup. It had butter stains and salt damage for the next 8 days before Jamie Langenbrunner cleaned it up. In 2003, the Cup was slated to make its first ever visit to Slovakia with New Jersey Devils Yuri Bisek, but was left behind in Canada. It was on the next flight out of Toronto, of course. Finally, on August 22nd, 2004, Walter Newbrand, keeper of the Cup, boarded a plane to Fort St. John, British Columbia, to deliver it to Tampa Bay Lightning head scout Jake Gertson. However, Air Canada officials at Vancouver International Airport removed it before takeoff because of weight restrictions. The Cup spent the night in the luggage area, 1,200 kilometers away. It was flown to Fort St. John the following day. Let's see what else there is.
Why are they torturing this Cup so much?
They're celebrating. They're having fun. So
why does the poor Cup have to suffer for their fun?
On June 7th, 2007, after the Anaheim Ducks, formerly the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, won the Cup, their captain Scott Newendike brought the trophy to the set in LA of Jim Rome is Burning. While the Cup was on set, the associate producer of Jim Rome is Burning hoisted and posed with the Cup. The images were then posted on Jim Rome's website, which upset many Canadians who called Rome's radio show on June 8th to complain that Rogers had disrespected the Cup. Don Cherry called it.
Yeah, that's disrespecting the Cup.
Right? On June 6, 2008, after the Red Wings Stanley Cup parade, the Stanley Cup was pushed off a table at Chris Chelios' Chili Bar in Detroit, Michigan, and received another dent, which was later.
And that's not disrespecting the Cup. That's celebrating.
Yeah. After 2008 NHL Awards, it was revealed that the damage was much more extensive than originally revealed. A week after the same Detroit team won the Cup, Chris Draper's newborn daughter defecated in the Cup as she sat in it. The Cup was thoroughly cleaned, and Draper reportedly drank from it that same day. On June 17th, 2010, the Chicago Tribune swapped the Cup for germs. A lab tech for EMSL Analytic stated no staph, salmonella, or E. coli were found, and the general bacteria count was 4% of what is typically found on an office desk.
Okay.
After
all the things that happened to it, that is a surprise.
On June 21st, 2011, it was traveling in Quebec City when its vehicle broke down, forcing keeper of the Cup, Mike Bolt, to hitchhike with the Stanley Cup. Yep. On August 30th, 2011, during Michael Ryder's Day with the Cup, it fell off a table at a media event in St. John's, Newfoundland. This was just prior to the Cup's departure to Ryder's home in Buena Vista. There's 2 more. On July 12th, 2021, during a strong thunderstorm at an outdoor celebration following the conclusion of the Stanley Cup Lightning's victory parade, Patrick McGroon accidentally dropped the Cup due to rainy conditions, damaging the bowl. The Cup had to be sent back to be repaired to Montreal before the players could have their day with the trophy. Now, this is the most recent one, and this is the only one to happen on the ice.
Oh.
June 26, 2022, during the on-ice celebrations immediately after winning the Stanley Cup, Nikolai Aube-Kubel of the Colorado Avalanche tripped on his way to the team photo and fell to the ice, denting the base of the Cup in the process.
That poor Cup. I really do feel sorry for that Cup now.
Yeah, no, this Cup has been through so much, but I'm not going to lie, man. It has been a part of a lot of history, from Mario Lemieux going end-to-end in 1991 against the Minnesota North Stars, to Wayne Gretzky's dominance in the 1980s, to the New York Islanders dynasty from 79 to 83, from the 2 separate occasions where the Montreal Canadiens won 5 back-to-back. Never happened since. Montreal's the only team to do it. Greats have played for this Cup. There's even been people who have had their names scratched off of the Cup for things that they have done. There was one, I can't remember the exact specifics of this, but it was like the son or somebody related to one of the owners somehow managed to get his name engraved on the Cup, and then years later when they found out, they got it X'd off. So on the Cup, there's a series of X's. Yeah. No, this Cup, like I said, it's traveled all over the world. It's got some rich histories. That reminds me, I should read off the rules that were established when the Stanley Cup was first introduced. I forgot this part.
Probably should have, just like Doctor Strange, probably should have put the rules at the beginning.
Right? That's what happens when you get talking about things you love. Okay. So these are the 5 preliminary regulations. The winners shall return the cup in good order when required by the trustees so that they may be handed over to any team which may win it. 2. Each winning team, at his own expense, may have the club name and year engraved on the silver ring fitted on the cup. 3. The cup shall remain a challenge cup and should not become the property of one team, even if won more than once. Instead, in 1927, it became property of the league. 4. The trustee shall maintain absolute authority in all situations and disputes over the winner of the cup. And 5. If one of the existing trustees resigns or drops out, the remaining trustee shall nominate a substitute. So basically, none of those, very few of those are still around nowadays. Yeah.
6. One shall not urinate or defecate in the cup.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? Yeah, no, unfortunately, Lord Stanley, he didn't actually get to see the cup played for. He donated, then he had to go back to England, and he passed away before he was able to watch it played.
Ouch.
Yeah, but he basically, what happened was he went and saw his 2 boys play for Ottawa on a pond, and that's when he got the idea to do a Challenge Cup. So basically, because of that, we now have arguably one of the most iconic sports trophies in history.
Yeah, and even though he didn't get to see the fruits of his labor, he's now immortalized in history for all time always.
Exactly. It's named after him. It's known as the Cup, Lord Stanley's Cup, the Holy Grail, or facetiously as Lord Stanley's mug.
But my favorite is still
The Holy Grail!
Totally. It's literally the Holy Grail because you have to play, if you were to play every game of the series in the playoffs, you would have to play 28 games, win 16 of them.
And unlike most sports cup, not that I know much, but unlike most sports cup, it kind of is the shape of a grail.
Exactly. Whereas you look like at the trophy, the Bill Lombardi trophy for football. It's literally just a silver football on a pedestal. The World Series one is a design I like. It's literally just it's round and it's got flags representing every single franchise currently in the league. That's cool. Their trophy. The NBA trophy, I think it's also the same. It's a basketball on a pedestal. So basically, baseball and hockey have the 2 most original designs.
Yeah, creative design.
Yeah. So, are there any questions you have about the Stanley Cup that I might not have covered? Anything you want to
know? No, I think you pretty much covered all the bases.
There are some great documentaries out there, more than I can ever espouse on the Stanley Cup. Canada People's History is a great one. It's basically the Canada's history with hockey, and it also weaves in the NHL stuff on there. I actually found it on YouTube once. If it's still available, I will send you the playlist. I think you might enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it starts literally right at the beginning of hockey, and it goes up until like maybe about 15 years ago, which is when I got it. And they're hour-long episodes, so it's easily digestible.
Okay.
So wow, I can't believe I actually managed to talk for 48 minutes about that. So yeah, no, that brings an end to what my discussion of the NHL is, because unfortunately there's not that many those from those early years. A lot of what's known is just from the written word. There's not really that much video. There's not that many photos, unfortunately. So it's really hard to give an audio visual representation of it. So I hope I was able to convey that through words.
Yeah, you were. I mean, especially the stories of what happened to the cup.
Those are always some of my favorite ones.
Yeah, those are images that are not burned into my consciousness for all time always.
Now, I do have one other story to tell. This is probably my favorite comeback in sports, verbal comeback. So 1996, the year Colorado won their first cup. It was the semifinals, which was the second round. Chicago versus Colorado. And Jeremy Roenick of the Chicago Blackhawks, he had Patrick Waugh's number, as they say. Basically, he was more likely he was going to score on him given a chance. And so Roenick, during a press conference, is like, "Oh, I'm going to deke him out so bad they'll have to get his jockstrap from the rafters." You know what Patrick Waugh's report was? And I love this. "Sorry, I didn't hear him because I had my 2 Stanley Cup rigs plug my ears." That was the end of that.
In other words,
pretty much. Now, Patrick Waugh, he's someone who you could easily accuse him of being a showboat. Another one of my favorite instances during the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Avalanche's rival, the Red Wings. He stops the puck, and out of all arrogance, he's like, I got it. He didn't see the puck fall out of his glove and the player score.
Ooh.
This is
And that happened mid-game?
Mid-game.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That is embarrassing.
Against their rivals. And this is arguably one of the greatest goalies ever lived. He had the wins record for years. All right, so 50. You said earlier that what I was saying was kind of giving you things for your topic next week.
I was not aware that I'm supposed to reveal it today.
If you don't want to reveal it, that is perfectly fine. If you don't have it
I
already.
was gonna let it be a surprise and just reveal it live on the episode. Not live, but
I like that. I do have a thing for mine. Next one. I'm just going to reveal it now. I'm going to get 50 to watch his first wrestling pay-per-view with WrestleMania 6 from Toronto.
Okay. So, wait. Is that going to be like a watch along?
It's not going to be a watch along.
Okay.
You've got 2 weeks to watch it. You got 2 weeks to watch it. I will lend you my WWE Network access if required. Because I want to see this through the eyes of someone who's never seen professional wrestling, and it takes place in Canada. It's the first WrestleMania in Canada. So, all right. So, 50. Where can everybody find you when you're not waving the Israeli flag high?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek. I do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way to 2022. And I believe if my calculations are correct, I should be down with season 2 already, finally, and going on to William Hartnell's third season, in my opinion, the weakest season, even though it has some of the highest high points. How does that work? It's Doctor Who. You figure it out. And I also have other videos on my channel whenever I have time to do them. And also, speaking of Doctor Who, I also have my own show on this network called The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where I talk everything Doctor Who all throughout a month. And this guy is a frequent guest on that show. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, and as for myself, you can find me on my personal Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_saxman. You can find me on shows on this network. You can find me Friday nights over on Blokes of Wrestling on the Let's Get It Read network. And of course, we are now part of the overall Benverse and subscribe to all these channels. We're all part of the same group. We were all friends with our good friend Ben Rainer, who unfortunately passed away just over a month ago. So go follow Multiverse of Geekdom, Movie Lovers Unite, Galaxy Geeks, Something to Talk About, 50's channel, 50 Shades of Geek, the Northern Entertainment Group, of course, the Midnight Cinema, and A-Town Reviews. So on behalf of myself and 50, we will see you next week as we let our geek flags fly. Have a good week, folks. Talk to you soon.